Hello, I'm John, and I do the smokeless powder guns in this channel, and Dimwit, he does the black powder guns. And I started doing a series about Krag Jørgensen rifles. And today we're going to talk about how to mount a scope on a Krag rifle, and different ways of doing that, and what to do and what not to do, and we will talk about some ways to make it kind of a retro, old-fashioned scope gun, or maybe even a little more modern gun. So this is what the receiver on a Krag rifle looks like. There's a lot of work that goes into one of these, a lot of milling. I don't even dare think what it would cost to make something like that nowadays. But one of the things you have to think about when putting a scope on the Krag is that the spent casing flips upwards like this, and you have to be kind of firm when you do it. You've just seen what happened if you're not. And if that empty casing hits the scope, it's going to fall down back into the action. So the scope has to be a little bit off to the side, to the left, or it's got to be fairly high up. And I made another video a few days ago where I showed, I think it was 11 different Krag rifles that or 10, that I put a scope on in different ways, so you might want to watch that. And we're going to make more videos, go more into detail and have a closer look at every one of them rifles. So, but it's a good idea, I think, to just make one video to talk about mounting a scope. So, but if you want the scope straight above the gun, and if you want to drill in the receiver here, you should try to get, now we're in Norway, and the Krag rifles are cheap and plentiful here, and a lot of them have been messed with, made into competition guns and hunting rifles, and so it doesn't matter if we mess around a little more with them, they're not worth anything over here. So, but if you're going to drill in the receiver, this is the threaded area of the receiver where the barrel threads in. I strongly recommend you use a model 1912 carbine receiver, because they're beefier here and stronger, and the extractor's got a different design, so it's stronger in this area. And if you ever seen a Krag rifle that's blown up, this is where they break. A Krag rifle isn't going to send the bolt into your brain. It's gonna crack open here on top and the front, and the barrel is going to jump forward. All right. So if you're gonna put a scope on top, you have to drill here and use model 1912 carbine receiver. The rest we're going to talk about is how to mount the scope to the side, and we use this The Norwegian Krag has a groove on the left side of the receiver here. See? And that's where we'll put our scope mounts. Like this. And there are a lot of ways you can do that. They all start out with a piece of round bar steel, 20 millimeter thick. And from this you can make whatever you want, but this has got the right thickness to fit inside this groove, see? So, now I have a drilling fixture to help me do the drilling, and I have some fixtures to help me do the milling, so I can do it over and over again with the identical result. But you don't need to have that. I'll tell you how you can do it if you just want to do it on one gun without having to invest in specialty tools like I have. But I'll show them to you. This is a drilling fixture that helps me drill the receiver in the right place, and it also helps me drill the holes in the steel bar in the right place. So I'll do the same thing over and over again. And but to do this, you this is pretty rare, I think. It's made at the Kongsberg factory by a gunsmith there. Worked a little bit on the side, and so you have to unthread the barrel to use this, and the receiver fits in here. So, but enough about that. You don't have one of them, so what you do is you take a piece of 20 millimeter round bar steel, cut it to the length you want so it will fit down in that groove, and then you drill holes in it, but don't countersink for the heads yet, just the thickness you need for the screws. You want to do that in a drill press and with a machine vise, so you get it straight. And then you take your steel bar with the screw holes in it and you glue it on your receiver in the right position with some epoxy glue or something like that, Gorilla Glue. And then let it dry, and then the holes in your steel bar will act as a guide to drill the receiver. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because we have to talk a little bit about what it's like to drill in one of these. These are case hardened, and which means they have a hard surface and they're soft in the middle. And so what you might want to do is before you glue it, put it in the right place, and then you have a punch that's pointed in the end, and you hit on that and mark where you're gonna drill, and then you use a special drill bit. If you can get these Bosch blue drill bits, as you can see they're blue down in the groove there. I use this little 4 millimeter, and I just took, there's a bigger one, so it's easier for you to see, but these are a bit different. They are much like a drill bit made for drilling in concrete, except that, you know, it's got this hard metal tip that's been soldered to the drill bit. And with these, they have sharpened that hardened steel bit like an ordinary drill bit for steel. So it's very effective for drilling in things that are hardened. So what you do is you drill just through the surface, and it has to be a big enough hole for the your threading tap. We're going to have to fit down through there without getting damage from this hardened surface. So this is bigger than the hole you're going to drill all the way through. So you drill this just a little ways through the surface, and then you switch to an ordinary drill bit, then you drill almost through here, and then you'll start having some resistance before you get all the way through, because of course this other surface is also hardened. So you have to be careful, or you could break your drill bit. And usually you can kind of get a bulge or dent underneath here, and then you can use a Dremel tool and with a rounded tip and these diamonds on it, and you can grind away on the inside here. Basically do the same thing as you did with this Bosch blue drill bit. You got to get rid of that hardened surface, and then you finish your drilling, and then you can do the tapping. But it's nice to be able to glue this on. You might have to break it loose and continue your work and glue it again. I don't know. I haven't done it that way because I got this fixture, but it can be done. And so now you have a receiver that's been drilled and tapped, and you have a beginning of what's going to be your base for the scope mount. And then you're going to have to work on this. I have a kind of a combined drill press and mill, and of course I have this machine vise on there with you can make it go either way you want. And I replace these. It's got these replaceable jaws, this vise in there, and I replaced them with some that I made myself. So the steel bar fits down in there, so I can get this fastened in my machine vise exactly the same every time. And you don't have to do that, but you're gonna need something underneath to support it, to make sure it's level and things. And then you mill it, and there's you can kind of see there's a line there, and there's some red marker. So you end up with basically a half moon shaped piece of steel, and then you can drill and tap and mount something else on top of that. And if you watch this earlier video of mine, you can see different versions of what I've done. You can use these Redfield mounts, a little old school, and or you can use a piece of Picatinny rail for a more of a modern look, or there's lots of other options as well. It just depends on what you want to do. And I also have used these Vaver quick detachable mounts. There's the long version, and this is one of the short versions, and this is an older one, and they come in different sizes and shapes, but they're all the same kind of. They have these screws, and they fit into a base that goes on the gun. And Vaver makes these base for lots of guns, but this one I have made myself. And it fits into the groove of the gun like this. And it also started out as a round steel bar, but there's more work to this. So I made more of these replaceable jaws for my machine vise. So the one I showed you has got number 1 on it. That's what I start out with, and so they get this shape. And then I put these in there to level it off like that. And then it fits in here, and I can level it off that side. And finally there's one more, and when I'm done with that, this is the shape that I have. And these are pretty clever. They kind of hooks on there, and then as you tighten that screw, it tightens up real well. So that's one way of doing it. And let's see, if you're gonna do an old school sort of scope, then these Redfield mounts, they are pretty clever because you can adjust it sideways with these screws there. And but no matter what you do, I kind of like using Burris signature rings. There's one version, and this is, you can put that on a Vaver base or a Picatinny rail. And this goes on the Redfield rail, and they have these plastic inserts, and you can buy them in a box like this. And they have different versions that are offset. So that means if you're gonna build a long distance sniper rifle, you can get a little elevation from these rings, so that you'll have more clicks available on your scope. I really like these Burris signature rings with the plastic inserts. It's a good product. So let's see, there's some other things that we should talk about. If you're going to have a Krag rifle that shoots real well, you should replace the trigger. And this is a match trigger assembly. This one is made in Denmark by Schultz and Larsen, and they also made them here in Norway at the Kongsberg factory, and they look pretty much the same. These are black and the Kongsberg is grey, and the Kongsberg's got one more adjustment screw, I think. They're both good. This is what the original trigger assembly looks like on the carbines and on the infantry rifles. Then they started making these sharpshooter rifles, and they made a longer trigger. You get more leverage on it, and it's got grooves in it. But it's still a simple two-stage military trigger, and you can get them to work reasonably well, but if you try one of these, you'll never want to go back, I promise. So, these are easy to come by in Norway. Some other things that I do. You may want to cut your barrel down, and you don't need to lathe to do that. You can leave it in the action and cut it off with a hacksaw. A good idea is to put a couple of hose clamps on the barrel and cut between the hose clamps. It will help you keep your hacksaw blade in a straight line. And then you have to level it off by hand with a file, and you can use a small level or a cut off piece of angle iron, and kind of keep working it with a file until it's completely level. And then I have a tool to re-crown the barrel, and this cutter squares it off, and this gives you that crown. But you don't have to have that. What I've done for years is I put a brass screw like this with that. You got to have that kind of a head on it, a domed head, and old-fashioned screwdriver slot. It has to be brass. You put this in your drill. Just an ordinary battery drill will do fine, and they use some of these grinding paste that they use on when you overhaul an engine of a car or something like that. You use this to grind your valves. So these valve grinding compound on the head of a brass screw, and there's a drill, and you work it for a little bit, and then dip it in this some more, and it does a wonderful job. So, and now when I do threads, this is a tap, I have some cutting oil from Brownells that's really good, but most of the time I use this old-fashioned can of oil. It's got olive oil in it, and that works very well. I use it for drilling, I use it for tapping, I use it for, I also have chamber brooch, and I use olive oil with that. I clamp the barrel with the chamber up, barrel pointing down, and I dip this in a jar of olive oil, and I work with it, and then I dip it down in that olive oil jar and stir it around a little bit, and all the metal shavings just falls off and ends up at the bottom of that jar. And that's also what I do when I just make threads for screws. get rid of all the metal shavings that way. So, and I also have these gauges here. They're to set the headspace. There's a go gauge and there's a no go gauge, and to make sure you got the right headspace on your gun. But you're probably not going to take your barrel out of the gun, so usually you won't have any use for that. But let's see, is there anything else I should mention? The other guns that I have lots of different variations of what we talked about, and we'll get into them scope mounts in more details on each gun. But this gives you kind of an idea. And when you sight in a gun with, if you have your scope mounted a little bit at the side, because when this flips up, you can't have it hitting the scope. So the best thing to do is sight the gun in so it will actually, point of impact will be just a little bit to the left of the point of aim. So it's the same distance that the difference between the scope and the rifle bore. And that way your line of fire and your line of sight will be parallel. Because if you sight your rifle in at 100 yards or meters and you hit exactly at the point of aim, then if you're going to shoot at something at 3 times that distance and you set your elevation, then your path of the bullet is going to cross your line of sight and end up off to the right. So it doesn't matter. It's not that big a difference. It's much less than an inch. I can't remember. I'll probably measure a little bit, and we'll talk about that some other time. But it's like maybe 3/4 of an inch. And when you aim at something that's 100 to 300, 500 yards away, it isn't going to matter that your sight is adjusted so that you hit 3/4 of an inch to the left. So that's how you deal with a sight that's offset. And another thing I should mention is that you don't do this to a collectible gun in nice original condition. Find a gun that's been messed with, been made into a hunting gun or a target rifle. And also it's difficult to find a scope that will work, because you have to be able to mount it so that you get the right distance between your eye and the scope. That's what we call the eye relief. And then you don't want the turrets to interfere with the empty cartridge that flips up. So you want them turrets to be far enough to the front that the casing flips up behind it. Now, what's been done before is that if you can't do that, you can turn your scope 1/4 of a turn to the left, and your sideways turret now becomes your up and down turrets, and your up and down turret becomes your sideways turret. So you can do that, but you got to keep your eye relief distance in mind, and you have to, you don't want the casing to interfere with these turrets. So and you have to get these scope rings in the proper places. Sometimes you can't avoid it, you know, it doesn't want, just don't want to fit, because one of the, well, no matter what you do, one of the scope rings is going to interfere with the turret. So not, you can't use just any scope, but if you buy your scope off the internet, be sure to give that some thought. And sometimes they'll have an illustration with different measurements, and you can kind of figure it out with a little experience. But I bought a lot of scopes that I can't use on a Krag, but I like scopes, so I can use something else. I can't really think of anything else I should say, except my motivation for doing this is that I wish there would be more interest in the Krag rifles. It's such a wonderful mechanism, and they're such a pleasure to shoot. And in Norway they were used for competition rifles up until after 1990. That's when they introduced this Vaver rifle, but that's a while ago now. And then they used them for hunting rifles up until it started to be common with scopes, and this Krag was difficult to mount the scope on, and by then we had a lot of Mauser M98 that's been left behind by the Germans during World War II, and also a lot of Swedish Mal 96 Mausers imported as surplus from Sweden, and they were a lot easier to mount scopes on. So the Krag kind of played out its role as a hunting rifle in Norway in the 1960s, and for moose you're not even allowed to use it anymore, because, well, even though you can hand load it to be powerful enough to meet the requirements, they still won't let you use it on moose, because when the Krag action gets wet, it will hit kind of up to the left. So you get a lot of animals getting hurt, and you have to chase them down and stuff. So that's the way it is. But you can use it on deer and whatever else you want to hunt, and they're wonderful guns to shoot. So stick with me with this series of Krag Jørgensen videos, and we'll make sure you see that first one I made with all them guns. Even got a couple of Mausers in it. I think it's 13 guns in that video, they're all been customized by me except one. And so we're going to make a video for each one of them, and I'll make a video showing some more equipment from the old Kongsberg weapons factory. I have quite a bit of gadgets from there, and I have accessories, Krag accessories, and so there'll be a whole series of Krag videos every now and then. So you may want to subscribe, and you'll get to see them later on. Okay, that's enough talk. I probably forgot to say something. Maybe something I said could have been said differently. I'm not a professional gunsmith, but I've been tinkering with guns for 40 years, and over the years it's gotten more advanced. I have worked as a professional locksmith for 30 years, and that's well, similar work really, and I have tinkered with old cars and tractors for 40 years, so I'm a decent mechanic. So don't mess up Grandpa's old gun, and good luck.